Well, welcome to the architectural session panel. My name's Serena Landers. I'm the operations administrator with Karsten Interior Services. I've been with Karsten for 8 years now. The first 6 years of my career, I served as the accounts payable director. And then I recently changed a few years ago over to operations. My degree is actually in criminal justice. I worked in legal before I came over to the construction side. Right now I serve as the U of H Industry Advisory Board Student Engagement Chair. I'm on the board at the Associated Builders and Contractors, and I'm a peer group moderator for another construction association. I've got here two fabulous panelists that I would like to introduce to you all today. We'll start with Mr. Hal Sharp. Mr. Sharp is a native Houstonian and a retired architect. His degrees in architecture are from A&M and U of H. He practiced for 43 years in the architecture field with firms like CRS, Skidmore, Onings, and Merrill. In the last 21 years as a principal at the very well-renowned Gensler. The majority of his experience has been on high-rise commercial corporate campuses and mixed-use projects. Prior to his retirement in November 2019, he was the principal in charge of projects such as the ExxonMobil campus in Spring, the Hess Tower in downtown Houston, and the new Walmart corporate campus in Bentonville, Arkansas. We also have here Moises. Did I say it right? Okay.
Yes. Right.
Moises Weber. He's got over 30 years of experience. He delivers complex projects with professionalism and integrity and dedication. Most of his responsibilities include the documentation, of schematic design and design development through construction documents, including client contact throughout the project delivery with a strong emphasis on technical detailings. So gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. We're gonna go dive right in. I've got a few questions for you. Mr. Weber, we're gonna start with you on the first question that we have here. How would you describe the architectural aspects of commercial building design and construction to someone interested in a career in skilled crafts?
Well, there's obviously many aspects to this. Obviously, the definition of an architect, in short, is the person who plans, designs, and oversees the construction of buildings. That's the basic description. That entitles many things, many fields, and many specialties. To practice architecture means to provide services. Basically, you're providing a service in connection with the design of buildings and spaces where people live and people, basically make their livings. That goes all the way from a tent, if you will, to cities, right? So, you need to be aware of the space, of the surroundings within the space you're going to design something. And it involves, well, as I said, many aspects. As an architect, your decisions affect public safety, basically. So given that, you are required to have some education in the technical and the practical fields. So your decisions are educated decisions, and since you are involved in public safety, well, that becomes really important. So you need practice. And you need technical education. The technical education varies by jurisdiction. Normally, you go through a 4-year undergraduate program, and then you go on to different specialties. You will be overseeing, as in the architectural profession, you're going to be overseeing the design, as I said, and construction of buildings with all the technical skills that requires.
Mr. Sharp, is there anything that you would add to that?
Well, I would underscore the point that Moises makes about there being just an enormous number of skill crafts involved with every project. They range everywhere from custom mill work to, like in Moises' case, his practice is predominantly medical facilities. There's an enormous amount of knowledge in medical equipment, its applications, the infrastructure that it takes to support them, and it's a wide open field. You know, one of the things that we always stress with clients was the earlier on in the project we could have a contractor involved during design, the better our chances were of having input during design from the skilled tradesmen, the subcontractors who have a much higher degree of specialty in their field than we would as a design architect. It's very important as an architect to have a general working knowledge of many different things, but you really are better off when you rely on the expertise of skilled tradesmen to help advise.
Okay, so sounds like a lot of collaboration is involved.
Collaboration and communication
Correct.
are the two most important things one can bring to the table as an architect.
Okay, so tell me, I'll start with you, Hal. Tell me, what does a day in the life of an architect look like?
Well, I would say let's break it down into the phases of a project. You know, the early on phases of a project, once a client has engaged you, your day looks like a lot of communication and listening to your client. Listening skills are crucial. You're asked to help that client solve challenging problems, to conduct their business in a space that works for them. And so listening skills and communication are crucial. As you get that past that part of the design and you're working on the design through the middle phases toward documentation of the solutions, that communication then rolls into engaging with not only your own teammates within your architecture firm, but with the consultants, the specialty engineers and specialty consultants that come on board. You become the mouthpiece for the client's needs to that part of the team. Collaborate with them. Many of them will have kind of, sometimes will be construed as conflicting needs. And you kind of need to be the arbitrator to kind of figure out how to satisfy as much as you can each of the systems that are needed from them.
What's an example of the conflicting? Can you?
Oh, sure, I can make one up here. The example of the engineer who's responsible for air conditioning and heating the building. He may need to bring a large duct through a space that's 24 inches deep. And part of your program is just you want to have a big, nice, wide open space. So your structural engineer, well, I need a big beam to go across there that's also 24 to 30 inches deep. And I don't have enough room in the space above the ceiling to put that large duct and that big beam. So enter the architect to try to figure out how to broker a way around that conflict.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. Weber, are there? I heard you guys mention earlier some specializations in the field. Give us some examples and talk about all the different things that entails.
Yeah, just to abound a little bit on what Hal just said. Yeah, I mean, many times the conflicts come from the owner, from the client itself, because many times they know they need something, but they don't know exactly what is it that they need. So they don't communicate exactly their needs to you, and you as the professional it is within your responsibility to untangle, say, all that information and come with a solution that's convenient, that's suitable for the project. And within that, that involves all the coordination with consultants and with the owner side. Many times the owner has users that use that space that don't even, know how to put, together a plan. So you have to help everybody come to a comprehensive solution for that. And now
Okay.
going to your question, yeah, there are many specialties in the field. There are many things that you can do within the architectural field. You can specialize in commercial architecture with all the ramifications that it has, healthcare, like we do, science and technology projects, for example, labs, research labs, pharmaceutical labs, and all that kind of stuff. That's what I specialize on. Education projects. There are different kinds of educational projects. I mean, K through 12 or higher education, so on and so forth. Museums, restaurants, you name it, you call it. There's people that specialize and do, just one thing, and that's what they like doing. That's why what their skills are developed to do. That's on one hand. On the other hand, there are different say branches of the profession that you can specialize on as well, like urban planning, for example. You can do urban planning, you can do landscape architecture, you can do, specialize only in construction management, construction administration. So there are a lot of things that you can do within the profession.
So the specialization, I think you mentioned earlier, that's additional education, or like when do you determine, like at what point in your schooling do you determine what your specialization is going to be?
Yeah, you can go on and take a postgraduate degree if you want, on different specialties. I mean, you can start with studying architecture, as a trunk, say, and then go on to specialize in, say, urban planning, for example, and that requires additional education, of course.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually kind of leads into the next question, which I think you pretty much covered it. What education do you need to become an architect? It's a 4-year degree, and then you can do the postgraduate. Now, can you do multiple different, I guess, disciplines within that, or if you're just doing commercial, like it's your commercial postgraduate, there's no combined degree plan?
Well, if you're asking me, I'm a foreign architect. I'm foreign trained architect. I'm from Mexico, and I went through a 5-year undergraduate program that's not doesn't really work as an undergraduate. As you come out from there, you become an architect. I mean, you're ready to take your tests and whatnot, and become licensed.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm licensed down there in Mexico. I'm licensed also in Texas now. When I came to Texas some 23 years ago, I had to take some additional education of things that was determined I was, lacking of because of my program over there in Mexico. And then I went through all the testing and all of that and became licensed. Yeah, most schools here are a 4-year program, but maybe, Hal will know better about that than I do because he was educated here.
Yeah, you said it. Well, it said in like I was reading earlier, from Texas A&M and University of Houston. What'd you get from where, and how long did it take you?
Yeah, well, the depending upon the school, Moises is correct. Some schools in the United States do have a 5-year program that is an accredited program from which one can attain a license with only that baccalaureate degree. In my case, Texas A&M has a 4-year degree program. It's called a Bachelor of Environmental Design. And so I took that degree, was commissioned into the Army, went into military service for a while. And after I came out of the Army, got back to Houston and did graduate studies at the University of Houston. So I have a master's degree in architecture from the U of H. The 4-year degree at A&M at the time I was there was not an accredited degree. So I would not have been able to sit for the architectural exam had I not taken a master's degree from an accredited program.
Okay.
But I would say, one general comment and opinion is that the architecture degree from any school basically prepares you to learn the profession, and particularly in a commercial arena. One has to practice under a licensed architect for a number of years before they really have the knowledge to really be a responsible practitioner. It's in the old days, they were called apprenticeships. But to a certain extent, this profession is one that you learn after you get into practice to develop the real deep skills that allow you to practice responsibly for a client in a large scale commercial realm. There are smaller scale practices that deal with smaller scale projects, whether they be commercial or whether they be even things like residential or so on, that one can probably get into more quickly. But the larger scale, complex projects take a number of years of practice and quite a bit of experience.
Okay, that makes sense. So are there different levels within, like, do you start as a apprentice, or like, just for example, in construction, you start, as a assistant project manager and then move to project manager? Is it similar in that regard?
Well, I would say, from my experience, I spent most of my career in large firms doing large scale projects. And so a given team, I'll just, in a theoretical team I'll make up here for this conversation, if many of those projects would have an architecture team of anywhere from 4 to 10 or 15 people. For example, you mentioned in my introduction the ExxonMobil campus that I was the lead principal for at Gensler. There was a time during the construction documents phase of that project, I had 73 architects working on the construction document, and about 3 times that many engineers from the various consultant teams. So
Wow.
that was the size of that team. We were designing multiple buildings at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But within any of those teams, usually the junior people in the firm who are recently out of school, many of whom are not licensed yet, but they're working under licensed architects, are an important part of the team because they're manipulating the computer and the 3D documentation phase and design phase. They are the ones who are doing a significant part of that computer work. Then there's a level of staff that are kind of the mid-level managers, if you will. Most of them are licensed, whether they're in architecture or licensed as interior designers in the interior build-out piece of the project. They are sort of middle managers that are probably working with 3 to 5 of those junior people that I just described, helping them coordinate their work, teaching them as they practice together. And that's how they get their learning, through someone who's hands-on, talking to them hourly, seeing what they're doing and collaborating. And then ultimately you have your more senior people that are more involved with the communications with the client on decision-making, evolution of conflict resolution that you uncover when you're trying to marry the client's desires, that sometimes they want everything, but everything won't fit into the size project that they want.
That makes sense. Moises, I want to know what led you to this career? How'd you get here?
Well, I was always a very curious child. As a child, I was always curious of how things were put together, and that's what I think is the basis of my decision to go into architectural school, because or the architectural career. Uh, Everything is put together in a way, right? And to create a whole. And I mean, I used to pull apart toys that I was given as a child to see how they were built, what was inside. And then I couldn't always, put them back together. Of course, many times I was left with spare pieces, after I put them apart. But I mean, that's basically it. I mean, picture if you have say any kind of toy, and it has, I don't know, 20 pieces to it, and it's put together to do something. Imagine millions of pieces put together to form a building, a livable space where people live, where people work, where people exercise, where people do, their daily activities. That was my main driver, I think, and all the systems that go into a construction or a building, and what makes it work. I mean, many times we don't, stop to think, for example, what prevents the humidity from the outside to get into my building, things like that. And all those technical aspects that later turn into be technical knowledge is what drove me to the profession.
Okay. How, I'm curious to know your backstory too. How'd you get into the industry?
Well, like Moises, I always, even as a child, building model airplanes and model cars and all those things. I loved putting things together. I loved learning how they worked. I was about 10 years old. My parents bought a little place up on the San Jacinto River, and we hired a carpenter to build us a little cabin. And my dad and my brother and I worked with these carpenters to help frame that house. And that was so much fun to get exposed to that and swing a hammer and cut wood. And
Yeah.
so that was a very, very, in the very early days of my life, it kind of realized that I liked how things went together. In high school, I took a class in mechanical drafting, the old-fashioned T-square and pencil drawing days. And I enjoyed figuring out how to draw things, create shapes and perspectives and those things. And but I got lucky in figuring out to get into architecture. I didn't know anybody as an architect all the way through high school. My dad was a blue-collar machinist, and I grew up in a blue-collar working neighborhood, and so I didn't know any white-collar professionals. But through high school counselor, they directed my my inquisitiveness about how things are built toward architecture, and it stuck. I never changed degrees, and I've got to say the 43 years that I spent in the business was terrifically rewarding, and got a great satisfaction from it. Look back on it with many terrific memories.
What was your favorite, or what is your favorite part about being an architect?
Well, I've told a number of my friends and partners during this last year, in my first year of retirement, when I keep up with them for a visit or something, I've told them that, I do miss the work some, but what I miss more is all of the people that I work with, because you do work with many people from the client side, your own company side. You create relationships in with consultants who are working for other companies that are lifelong relationships. And those are the things I miss even more than the thrill of helping design a building and then see it take shape.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that answer. We are getting close to time, and I want to save a couple minutes or just open now. If there's any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box. Mr. Weber, what advice would you give to a student who's considering a career in architecture?
You know, the basic advice that I would have is applies to any path or any career you choose. Make sure it's your passion. If you're choosing to do something, it's because you're aiming to do that for your professional life. So it needs to be something that is rewarding for you. As Hal said, and I forgot to mention that part, it's incredibly rewarding to finish a project. You know, the more complex the project is, the more rewarding it is to finish it. And, you know, some of my stories is, you know, one time one of of the scientists I designed a lab for was, I mean, almost got the Nobel Prize. I mean, he came in a close second. So, you know, and to think, you know, this guy works in a space that I designed for him, and he almost got a Nobel Prize was so rewarding. So, you know, make sure it's your passion.
Mhm.
That's my best advice.
Yeah. How is there anything that anything different that that Mr. Weber said that you would provide some wisdom to some of the students listening today?
Well, I would say some of the key traits that one should look in the mirror and make sure you think you're cut out for is, do you like solving problems? Do you like communicating with people? Are you a good listener? And in this profession, I think one needs to understand it's a good warning that you need to be used to working long hours. It takes a lot of work. Uh, and the last thing, the I guess the compensation for the architecture profession for honestly for the first few years in the practice is probably less than the compensation that you would see from people your own age that would have been college classmates who go into other professions. It takes a few years for that compensation level to catch up, but it does. But I think it's important to make sure one knows that ahead and is not disappointed by the fact that classmates in my fraternity or my sorority are making, you know, 10, 15, $20,000 more a year than me, and we've been out of school 3 years, and what's up with that?
Yeah.
But architecture will catch up. It's one that, because of that mentorship I mentioned, it does take a little while.
Okay. Okay. Well, no questions have come through just yet. So I do want to, is there anything else that you want to add? I think we've only got 1 minute left right now. Any other words of wisdom?
Well, I guess the one thing I would offer would be that it's a career that is very rewarding in many ways beyond just the paycheck that you get. You know, Moises' example of an almost Nobel science winner working in a space that he designed is bound to be such a huge thrill for him. You know, I have from commercial office and campuses and things have similar stories with folks who are using spaces and their business have taken off, and corporations are running multi-million dollars worth of worldwide practices out of, and to have had a little piece of that and can drive by downtown Houston and see some buildings that I was responsible for, and drive by the Woodlands and see the Anadarko Towers and other projects that I was responsible for. That's a real kick.
Yeah, that's awesome to be able to leave a legacy like that and show your kids and grandkids. And I built that kind of thing. So or I helped, I was a big part of it. That's gotta be pretty cool.
It is.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you having or you being here and taking the time to chat with us. So thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day.